Hi there. Welcome to the 26th Annual Tapestry of Voices Collaborative Poetry Reading. And we are very happy to be here today, and we are dedicating this poetry reading to Harris Gardner, one of the co-founders of Tapestry of Voices, and to his partner, Lainey Seneschal, and she passed away the end of May. And so I know she's here with us, and Lainey's and Harris's bios are on the front page, and their pictures are there also. So feel free to come and say hi to Harris. And I recognize some of these people. I'm not sure from where. So here's the deal. There's water on the table. We need you to stay hydrated, although it's a very delightful day today. The humidity is not too high. It's really nice to see some teachers here. Is there a teacher here from Haverhill? No. Is there a teacher here from Amesbury High?
Went out of town.
Okay, just today. That's right. I know. I remember. But we do have Debbie Zappo. Yes, she's become a fixture here. And hey. Yes, no, you don't hide behind any programs. You can stand up and boast. Okay? Debbie does wonderful work with her students. Her students love her, and she loves them, and they create wonderful poetry. And I am just so happy this year that we have poets from Amesbury and from Haverhill that have placed in the contest. And we want to keep that going. And every year we hope to maybe get yet another school that comes on board. So we might have to just create more places or more ties or something. These two have figured out that they're tied. So, Whittier is also here in spirit today, and we know how much he enjoyed this garden. The grape arbor that's over there behind you is here from Whittier's time. It was actually alive then. And it still produces Concord grapes every fall. And I think that's pretty cool. When we have people come for tours, that's better. When we have people come for tours, and my husband Peter and I give tours here, we always bring them out in the garden, and if the grapes are edible, they can pick grapes and eat the grapes off of Whittier's grape. There is a restroom inside the back door, immediately to the left when you get into the back door into the kitchen. After the poetry reading, and we have some luminary poets here today reading with us. We have two poets laureate. I think that's the right way to say it. And what?
It is.
Good. Anyway, two poets laureate and two or three people who have been reading here with us and are local poets and read all over the place and are just exceptional poets. And so we will do our best. My husband and I are both reading also. And my husband, and me too, but him mostly, have planned this thing and everything together single-handedly. And it was very, very nice to have some help today from the Redferns, and we do appreciate it. And from anybody else who came early, it was greatly appreciated. And I am really thrilled to have Dottie Williamson here, our photographer. If you look on the front of your program, at the bottom, there is a picture that Dottie took in what it says the year on the front, 2016. It was the 60. And it was a hummingbird that was on one of the bee balms, which have actually past their prime, way past their prime back here. Even though that's must be global warming. Bee balms are usually in full swing when we have Tapestry of Voices, and we haven't changed the date of Tapestry of Voices. So, hummingbird back there, and all of a sudden, everybody was looking at the hummingbird, and Dottie got a gorgeous picture of it. And Lainey, who was the first poet laureate of Amesbury, wrote a poem about the hummingbird in Whittier's garden. Yes. So, any other housekeeping things? If you could kind of silence your phones, that would be great. And no texting during the poetry reading. And we are 1 block away from the fire department, and occasionally they come out on a fire call. And then, just if you're speaking, stop. I am going to hand off to our current poet laureate, Lisa Lusani Phillips, and she is going to introduce the students, and she's going to present them with their certificates and their awards. And they will all read the poems that they won.
We were just very impressed with all the entries, and we're excited to have you here today to accept your awards and also to read the prize-winning poems. So without further ado, we have Lucius Nelson. He's a 9th grader from Newburyport High School, and he'll be reading The Boy in the Mirror, and he was tied for honorable mention with Jamie Redford. Read after that.
10th grader now.
Sorry.
I thought you had rising as
I do.
Sorry for my voice. I'm recently getting over a little bit of a cold. This is better?
Yes.
I'm staring at a boy. His hair isn't fluffy like the other boys. His chest isn't flat like the other boys. His stance isn't tough like the other boys. His pain shows in his eyes. Yet another thing they say means he isn't a man. Tears streak down his face. The tears themselves silently screaming, he's not a boy. His identity is constantly questioned. People ask things about him they don't ask about other boys. Each question a stone, pelting him, crushing him. Not even his own family sees him as anything other than a she. His life in danger just because of who he is. Can he talk? Can he walk? Can he be enough of a man? Can he be seen as enough of a man to survive? His life teeters on the line between passive aggression and violence. How far does the line have to waver for him to slip and fall? Will he join the countless others that preceded him? The countless others who just wanted to be themselves but couldn't? On his frail shoulders rests the weight of an unforgiving world. A world which labels him a crime. A world which calls hatred protection and anger mercy. Where hatred masquerades as a commitment to child welfare, but the only mercy offered is involuntary conformity. The law pretends to provide protection, but not to those who are trans or gay. Those kids are brutalized, the butt of every joke. They are considered wrong, not holy in the Lord's eyes. They are an affront to nature. The only choice is to destroy them, to protect them from themselves. I am seen as someone pretending, not existing, but I am here, and I am real.
ticket. All right. Small waves lap in a soothing lullaby. The moon shines down, covering the placid waters in a silvery blanket. The stillness holds like a raindrop waiting to fall. But as all things that go up must, the stillness shatters, and the raindrop falls, creating thousands of tiny ripples. A lone call echoes to distant shores. It is a lonesome call, a question asked to the depths of the night. Are you there? Are you coming? Will you be with me? The night has no voice except its quiet symphony of crickets and waves. And so the call dies, and the question is left unanswered, like a single raindrop falling into a quiet lake.
Next up, we have Sophie LaFranchise, who is going into her senior year at Newburyport High School, and she's reading 2 Years.
I know not to hold on so tight, and I should bite back these tears. Yes, the foundation was stable for years, but it has cracked and will soon disappear. I know not to unravel myself as a wobbly spool of thread, although I long to mend those fragments of friendship. I know not to hold on so tight, since I can only see so far into a mirror of memories. Every breath of regret fogs the glass. Meanwhile, the clock grows stubborn, and the shelf loses space to the new. Our hearts always follow these eternal ticks, so we choose to mute our own tempo. But there is a nagging notion beneath my grief. What if people moved with time? We are each a tooth on a gear, interlocking perfectly for an instant with another. It may be a temporary and fleeting touch, but eventually we will meet again. So I do not care if I hold on too tight, because someday I may be right. You will walk back into my life. Thank you.
Next up, we have Isabel Ledger, who is going into her senior year at Haverhill High School, and she'll be reading Dew on a Spider Web.
I could call it silk, fine threads fluttering, dappled with diamonds. I could call it a breeze, skeins of wind twining with the morning rain. I could call it lace, delicate and intricately woven, dotted with pearled beads. I could call it magic, suspended between two slender twigs, dew reflecting a weave of impossible beauty. Or perhaps it is simply just a spider web.
Our first place winner, Ebony Martino, who is a senior, or did you graduate? You graduated. Who just graduated from Newburyport High School, reading Strange Day.
Today, the potent urban air blew a grasshopper into my living room. She was very likely as confused as I was. It has been years. I am perched on my couch. She is crouching on the floor as if we are both in danger here. She looks first to the plant on the windowsill, rubbing her forearms together like a prayer, then to the library makeshift shelves of books stacked on 2x4s, and blinks with her enormous and complicated eyes. It seems she too would enjoy Mary Oliver. I take to her side then, careful not to encroach on her delicate space. A breath to me is her hurricane. We sit together, and I slowly commiserate with my own reckoning. I realize then I was born with the wings of a mourning dove, big enough to cover my shoulders and face when the sky gives way to her sorrows. Rain rolls from my feathers and pierces the earth like bullets. I have been reduced to an aesthetic. My bard-like crooning has become the static of your late afternoons. My steady and stoic mien are praised, and yet I wonder if I will be spared from the fox or your own polished gun. I hope I am granted the mercy I have granted this grasshopper, fearsome as she is. I realize then we are not so different, her and me. I was born wanting nothing more than to sing and love, but that does little to keep you dry when the storm has come. The little bug looks up to me with her kind and complex eyes and speaks. Her mouth moves back and forth instead of up and down, yet her words are clearer than my own. My dear, what would life be without a little fun? We are born to live after all. So I decide that I will fly, and behind a proud pigeon chest I will sing and I will love. I reach down my hand, an offering to her, and together we walk through the back door towards the mountain, the graveyard, the city, the ocean, and whatever comes after that.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, kids. If you guys knew how difficult it was for the judges to make a decision, all these poems that we get are just so incredibly awesome. I just see nothing but really good things for you in your futures, and keep up the good work, because you're all wonderful. Okay. Yeah. I don't like microphones. Okay, does anybody need water? Do you need some water? Okay. Anyhow, okay, the next, my husband is next. Okay. Wait till you hear what he's got for you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Mr. Whittier, for overseeing us here today. I've got a couple of things to do. The first thing is about John Greenleaf Whittier. Who was John Greenleaf Whittier? Was he a major player in the emancipation movement? Does anybody know the answer? Yes. Was he the authority on snowy winters? Yes. Was he a very moral person? Yes. Okay. Above all, he was a corresponder. He was a storyteller. His achievements were based on writing to people and by writing for the people with allegorical stories. By communicating his thoughts, he linked the anti-slavery movement. By writing stories, he united the country. He just had to tell stories. He was 19 in 1841. Let's imagine, in his first days as a poet, he heard that a group of persecuted Quakers were escaping to Nantucket. How exciting! He could tell the story, almost exactly true, of the event, a complete narration of the route from Amesbury to Nantucket. It is the story of how Thomas Macy, of Macy Colby House fame, led the persecuted Quakers to Nantucket. Greenleaf was still living on the farm in Haverhill when his poem, The Exiles, was submitted to the abolitionists. William Lloyd Garrison. It was published in the Newburyport Free Press. I'm going to read some short snippets of Exiles. If you wish to step into his shoes and make the same pilgrimage to Nantucket, you will have to read the whole poem. The Exiles has 70 verses and 1,300 words. Whittier was very thorough. Before I start, a little aside. Strangely, when Whittier started out, he was unknown. Some 59 years later, after being snowbound, he was personally known by many of the politicians and leaders and the public. His important friends included William Lloyd Garrison, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Gordon of Khartoum, Charles Sumner, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Starr King, Henry Horton, Harriet Beecher Stowe, and many more. If you tour the Whittier home, you will see the gallery of all his friends. Let's start and see how we get from Amesbury to Nantucket. The Exiles. The good man sat beside his door one sultry afternoon, with his young wife singing at his side an old and goodly tune. Just as the big raindrop fell, a weary stranger came and stood before the farmer's door with travel soiled and lame. "Friend, wilt thou give me shelter here?" the stranger meekly said, and leaning on his oaken staff, the good man's features read. "My life is hunted, evil men are following in my track. The traces of the torturer's whip are on my aged back. And much I fear it will peril thee, within thy doors to take a hunted seeker of the truth, oppressed for conscience sake." A heavy tramp of horses' feet came sounding up the lane, and half a score of horse or more came plunging through the rain. "Now, good Mercy, open the door, we would not be housebreakers. A rueful deed thou done this day in harbouring banished Quakers. Open thy door, thou wicked man, and let the pastor in, and give God thanks if 40 stripes repay the deadly sin." "What seek ye?" quoth the goodman. "The stranger is my guest. He is worn with toil and grievous wrong. Pray, let the old man rest." Then kindled Macy's eyes to fire. "No priest who walks the earth shall pluck away the stranger guest, made welcome in my hearth." "Ho, sheriff," quoth the ardent priest, "take Goodman Macy too. The sin of this day's heresy his back or purse will rue." "Now, good wife, haste thee," Macy cried. She caught his manly arm. Behind the parson urged pursuit with outcry and alarm. Ho, speed the Maces, neck on naught, the river course was clear. The plashing on its pebbled shore was music to the ear. A leap they gained the boat, and there the good man wields his oar. "Ill luck beside them all," he cried, "the laggards on the shore." Now there follows the realistic story that would take me about half an hour to read, so I'm jumping a bit. There's lots of excitement in it and danger. Far round the bleak and stormy cape the venturous Macy passed, and on Nantucket's naked isle drew up his boat at last. And how in long-built cabin they braved the rough sea weather, and there, in peace and quietness, went down life's vale together. God bless the sea-beat island, and grant for evermore that charity and freedom dwell, as now upon her shore. Thank you, Mr. Whittier. From John Greenleaf Whittier, you just heard how poetry narrated history and illustrates principles of how to live. Powerful words can tell the truth, or story-tell the imagination. My poem is to celebrate the wonder of what poetry can do in all ways, even if it's fictional. Ars Poetica, magical musical words. Tell me a story that's more than just words, with laughter, sweetness and sorrow. Speak of the trees and the bees or the birds, Look ahead to the past, or remember tomorrow. Bring me the magic of ideas so new, and things I've almost forgot. It really doesn't matter if all of it's true, or windy, or hilly, or spicy, or hot. Doing this, you'll find expanded your mind, picturing new thoughts that I cannot measure, of places and things that were hard to find, of hearts unlightened, with love as the treasure. The ideas that come will gush slow, then fast, so soft and loud in moods simpatica, and you will find your magic at last, the music of words. Thank you.
Okay, now, thank you for that, Peter. That was very nice. And now we have Miss Debbie Zabo, Mrs. Debbie Zabo, and she is going to read actually one of the poems of Whittier's that Lainey read so well, and that she really, you could tell that she really liked to read it. And then she has written an answer to that poem. Come on, Debbie.
I noticed that I'm placed right between husband and wife. What does that mean? Oh, okay. Well, as Chris said, I'm honored to be reading this poem, which she told me was one of Lainey's favorites, although I didn't know Lainey very well. I do feel honored to read this poem before I make fun of it. Okay, so here it is. The Frost Spirit. He comes, the Frost Spirit comes. You may trace his footsteps now on the naked woods and the blasted fields and the brown hills' withered brow. He has smitten the leaves of the gray old trees where their pleasant green came forth, and the winds which follow wherever he goes have shaken them down to earth. He comes, the Frost Spirit comes from the frozen Labrador, from the icy bridge of the northern seas which the white bear wanders o'er, where the fisherman's sail is stiff with ice and the luckless forms below in the sunless cold of the lingering night into marble statues grow. He comes, the Frost Spirit comes on the rushing northern blast, and the dark Norwegian pines have bowed as his fearful breath went past. With an unscorched wing, he is carried on where the fires of Hecla glow on the darkly beautiful sky above and the ancient ice below. He comes, the Frost Spirit comes, and the quiet lake shall feel the torpid touch of his blazing breath and ring to the skater's heel. And the streams which danced on the broken rocks or sang to the leaning grass shall bow again to their winter chain and in mournful silence pass. He comes, the Frost Spirit comes. Let us meet him as we may, and turn with the light of the parlor fire his evil power away, and gather closer the circle round when that firelight dances high, and laugh at the shriek of the baffled fiend as his sounding wing goes by. And this is the Lost Frost Spirit, an updated version of response. He goes, the Frost Spirit goes, while our planet warms with ease. We humans hold our habits tight, unfazed by a few degrees, though academics warn us, surely we cannot withstand whatever Mother Nature plans by way of reprimand. He goes, the frost spirit goes, from the frozen Arctic plain where the polar bears play on ice floes. Soon nothing will remain, just water, water everywhere, and floods that threaten all of life as we now know it. Will we cause our own downfall? He goes, the frost spirit goes, chased away by the emissions of fossil fuels that keep fat CEOs in high positions, while the trees and leaves and lakes await his sunless, dreadful blast, announcing of necessity their summer lives have passed. He goes, the frost spirit goes, though we've had cause to complain each time he's ushered in the snow, the sleet, and icy rain. We call him back now, hoping winter won't be too delayed, because there's danger in a haughty hand that's overplayed.
You are definitely a hard act to follow, but I have to follow you. Okay. I don't know that anyone will recognize this, but I am doing kind of a repeat for my reading of something that I did back in maybe 2014. I am reading Whittier's poem, Barbara Fritchie. And John Greenleaf Whittier, he was America's Quaker poet, and he was at the very center of the movement to abolish slavery. And prior to and during the Civil War, he was steeped in the roots of his Quaker faith, and he fought tirelessly against social injustice. And he put quill to paper to ensure that this turbulent time in our history was never forgotten. He set aside ambition and even love to maintain his warfare against what he called the national crime of slavery and inequality, employing action, argument, and lyric scorn. As the Quaker during wartime, Whittier struggled to write a patriotic poem that wasn't warlike. He heard a story that inspired such a poem. It was the story of Barbara Fritchie. As in many of his historical poems, Whittier uses poetic license. And when it became controversial, he wrote an introduction to the poem. Whittier wrote, "This poem was written in strict conformity to the account of the incident as I had it from respectable and trustworthy sources. It has since been the subject of a good deal of conflicting testimony, and the story was probably incorrect in some of its details. It is admitted by all that Barbara Fritchie was no myth, but a worthy and highly esteemed gentlewoman, intensely loyal, and a hater of the slavery rebellion, holding her Union flag sacred and keeping it with her Bible. That when the Confederates halted before her house and entered her dooryard, she denounced them with vigorous language, shook her cane in their faces, and drove them out. And when General Burnside's troops followed close upon Jackson's, she waved her flag and cheered them on. It is stated that Mary Quantrell, a brave and loyal lady in another part of the city, did wave her flag in sight of the Confederates. It is possible that there has been a blending of the two incidents. The incident took place in Frederick, Maryland, when the Confederate troops marched in. That morning, there had been 40 Union flags flying, but by noon, when the Confederate troops entered, they had all disappeared. This poem, published in 1863, is strongly reflective of one of Whittier's favorite themes, the effectiveness of nonviolent action. Up from the meadows rich with corn, clear in the cool September morn, the clustered spires of Frederick stand, green-walled by the hills of Maryland. Round about them, orchards sweep, apple and peach tree fruited deep. Fair as the garden of the Lord to the eyes of the famished rebel horde. On that pleasant morn of early fall, when Lee marched over the mountain wall, over the mountains, winding down horse and foot into Frederick town. 40 flags with their silver stars, 40 flags with their crimson bars, flapped in the morning wind. The son of noon looked down and saw not one. Up rose old Barbara Fritchie then, bowed with her 80 years and 10. Bravest of all in Frederick town, she took up the flag the men hauled down. To her attic window the staff she set, to show that one heart was loyal yet. Up the street came the rebel tread, Stonewall Jackson riding ahead. Under his slouched hat, left and right, he glanced. The old flag met his sight. Halt! The dust-brown ranks stood fast. Fire! Out blazed the rifle blast. It shivered the window pane and sash. It rent the banner with seam and gash. Quick as it fell from the broken staff, Dame Barbara snatched the silken scarf. She leaned far out on the windowsill and shook it forth with a royal will. Shoot if you must, this old gray head, but spare your country's flag, she said. A shade of sadness, a blush of shame over the face of the leader came. The nobler nature within him stirred to life at that woman's deed and word. Who touches a hair on yon gray head dies like a dog. March on, he said. All day long through Frederick streets sounded the tread of marching feet. All day long that free flag tossed over the heads of the rebel host. Ever its torn folds rose and fell on the loyal winds that it loved so well. And through the hill gaps sunset light shone over it with a warm good night. Barbara Fritchie's work is o'er, and the faded rebel rides his raids no more. Honor to her, and let a tear fall for her sake on Stonewall's bier. Over Barbara Fritchie's grave, flag of freedom and union wave. Peace and order and beauty draw round the symbol of light and law. And ever the stars above look down on the stars below in Fredericktown. Sometimes I think that there are gremlins. Because the wind only comes up when I have something on the podium that's going to fly away. Or maybe it's Whittier, I don't know. Anyhow, I have one last poem to read. And this one was written in 1851, 10 years before the start of the Civil War. And I would like to dedicate my reading of this poem today to the memory of Lainey Seneschal. And it's called In Peace. A track of moonlight on a quiet lake. Those small waves on a silver-sanded shore whisper of peace, and with low winds make such harmonies as keep the woods awake, and listening all night long for their sweet sake. A green waved slope of meadow, hovered o'er by angel troops of lilies, swaying light. On viewless stems with folded wings of white, a slumberous stretch of mountain land far seen, where the low westering day with gold and green, purple and amber softly blended, fills the wooded vales and melts among the hills. A vine-fringed river winding to its rest on the cabins on the calm bosom of a stormless sea, bearing alike upon its placid breast, with earthly flowers and heavenly stars impressed, the hues of time and of eternity. Such are the pictures which such are the pictures which the thought of thee, O friend, awakeneth, charming the keen pain of thy departure, and our sense of loss requiting with the fullness of thy gain. Lo, on the quiet grave thy life-born cross, dropped only at its side, methinks doth shine of thy beatitude and radiant sign. No sob of grief, no wild lament be there, to break the Sabbath of the holy air, but in their stead the silent breathing prayer of hearts, still waiting for a rest like thine. O Spirit redeemed, forgive us, if henceforth with sweet and pure similitudes of earth we keep the pleasant memory freshly green, of love's inheritance, a priceless part, which fancy's self in reverent awe is seen to paint, forgetful of the tricks of art, with pencil, dipped alone in the colors of the heart. And with that, I would like to introduce Lisa Lusani Phillips, our current Poet Laureate, for her reading today.
Thanks, Chris. So I'm reading Whittier's Proem, which was the sort of introductory poem to his first published collection. And I'm reading it because it kind of, he references his, the poets that he reveres. And I feel like, we're here today to sort of do the same thing and to have this community between us and with other, poets of the past, poets of the future. And I also admire him for his literary citizenship, his abolitionism and his fight for social justice, of course, and he references that too as one of his aims as a poet. Proem. I love the old melodious lays which softly melt the ages through. The songs of Spenser's golden days, Arcadian Sydney's silvery phrase, sprinkling our noon of time with freshest morning dew. Yet vainly, in my quiet hours, to breathe their marvelous notes I try. I feel them as the leaves and flowers in silence feel the dewy showers, and drink with glad, still lips the blessing of the sky. The rigor of a frozen clime, the harshness of an untaught ear, the jarring words of one whose rhyme beat often labor's hurried time, where duty's rugged march through storm and strife are here. Of mystic beauty, dreamy grace, no rounded art the lax supplies, unskilled the subtle lines to trace, or softer shades of nature's face, I view her common forms with unanointed eyes. The secrets of the heart and mind, to drop the plummet line below, our common world of joy and woe, a more intense despair or brighter hope to find. Yet here, at least, an earnest sense of human right and weal is shown, a hate of tyranny intense, and hearty in its vehemence, as if my brother's pain and sorrow were my own. O freedom, if to me belong nor mighty Milton's gift divine, nor Marvell's wit and graceful song, still with a love as deep and strong as theirs, I lay, like them, my best gifts on thy shrine. And this next poem, Caesura, is from my debut collection, Gust People, which was published in 2022. There are a few copies in the bookshop inside, no problem. But I'm reading this poem also in Lainey's memory, and what I really admire about her work is her love of nature and how that comes through in all the poems of hers that I've read. Caesura. Hear the scent of bee balm, how the hum of it wafts to a tickle, yet tastes like a nap. Beneath a bloom, a bumble sleeps, suspended, no difference between drowser and hammock. Meanwhile, semicolons with wings inflect a drift of mint as they zip from sip to sip. And it's a concrete poem, so it's in the shape of a Next up, we have Paulette Turco.
Hello. I yanked. I think it worked. It's an honor to follow, Lisa. And thank you, Chris and Peter, for your invitation, I guess, for your invitation to read, Chris and Harris for your invitation to read, and Peter for the background, and of course, producer, right there. This is the 26th year, and it's always been a pleasure, as many times as I've had the honor to read here. Somehow it's always wonderful weather. I'm glad that the whole reading is dedicated to Lainey Seneschal and to give tribute to Whittier and to also honor our student poets. It's so wonderful to see all the prize winners here today. Your poems are fabulous. Congratulations. I feel Lainey's presence today. Many of us are mentioning her. As she loved nature poetry, I will read a nature poem Whittier wrote in his later life, Sunset on the Bear Camp. Then I'll close with two short poems, Lainey's Night of the Blue Moon, and a new poem of mine, Painted Lady, which is a butterfly. I did want to comment that Whittier, even in his calm nature poems, uses exclamation points. And I'll try to let you know when I come upon them. This was from 1876. Sunset on the Bear Camp. A gold fringe on the purpling hem of hills, the river runs. As down its long green valley falls the last of summer's suns. Along its tawny gravel bed, broad flowing, swift and still, as if its meadow levels felt the hurry of the hill, noiseless between its banks of green, from curve to curve it slips. The drowsy maple shadows rest like fingers on its lips. A waif from Carol's wildest hills, unstoried and unknown, the ursine legend of its name prowls on its bank alone. Yet flowers, as fair its slopes adorn, as ever Yarrow knew, or under rainy iris skies by Spencer's mullah grew. And through the gaps of leaning trees, its mountain cradle shows, the gold against the amethyst, the green against the rose. Touched by a light that hath no name, a glory never sung, aloft on sky and mountain wall, our God's great pictures hung. How changed the summits vast and old,
no longer granite browed. They melt in rosy mist. The rock is softer than the cloud. The valley holds its breath. No leaf of all its elms is twirled. The silence of eternity seems falling on the world. The pause before the breaking seals of mystery is this. Yon miracle play of night and day makes dumb its witnesses. What unseen altar crowns the hills that reach up stair on stair? What eyes look through? What white wings fang these purple veils of air? What presence from the heavenly heights to those of earth stoops down? Not vainly Hellas dreamed of gods on Ida's snowy crown. Slow fades the vision of the sky. The golden water pales, and over all the valley land a gray-winged vapor sails. I go the common way of all. The sunset fires will burn, the flowers will blow, the river flow, when I no more return. No whisper from the mountain pine or lapsing stream shall tell the stranger, treading where I tread, of him who loved them well. The beauty seen is never lost. God's colors are all fast. The glory of this sunset heaven into my soul has passed, a sense of gladness unconfined to mortal date or clime. As the soul liveth, it shall live beyond the years of time. Beside the mystic asphodels shall bloom the homeborn flowers, and new horizons flush and glow with sunset hues of ours. Farewell, these smiling hills must wear too soon their wintry frown, and snow-cold winds from off them shake the maple's red leaves down. But I shall see a summer sun, still setting broad and low. The mountain slopes shall blush and bloom, the golden water flow. A lover's claim is mine on all I see to have and hold, the rose light of perpetual hills and sunsets never cold. John Greenleaf Whittier. Now we're pretty close to a wonderful river like this, and maybe one of the times we're driving by, we can stop along with this poem, read this poem. I'm going to read next Lainey's poem, almost, and maybe was, somehow in response to this poem. And it's on her website. Night of the Blue Moon. The blue moon sends its beam through a gap in the forest trees, illuminating the landscape as if dawn will soon arrive. Dreams are disturbed by its persistent light. Forgotten memories awaken. The past becomes the present, for time is not transient in the visions of the night. Lainey Seneschal. And this is her art in response, in watercolor, beautiful. I will close with a very short poem of mine, Painted Lady. She was flitting about, Purple cornflowers clustered on the edge of the meadow, beside newly mowed grass, as if dancing on stage, ballerina jetés, so unbothered by the harsh midday rays, all a shimmer on this still summer day. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. I'm glad to be here. I'm going to read In School Days by John Greenleaf Whittier. It's a short poem, and it showcases, perhaps even celebrates, a gesture we don't often encounter these days. It takes place in a school. There's a school. I won't even read the opening. He gives a beautiful opening. I'll just go right to the chase here. It's an encounter between two school children, and one likes to think maybe it's biographical in some way. Here's John, who's maybe 5, 6, 7, and another student who's a girl, pupil, and they have a little encounter at the school. Long years ago, a winter sun shone over it, that's the school that he's already described, at setting, lit up its western window panes and low eaves icy fretting. It touched the tangled golden curls and brown eyes full of grieving, of one who still her steps delayed when all the school was leaving. For near her stood the little boy, her childish favor singled, his cap pulled low upon a face where pride and shame were mingled. Pushing with restless feet the snow to right and left, he lingered, as restlessly her tiny hands the blue check apron fingered. He saw her lift her eyes. He felt the soft hands light caressing, and heard the tremble of her voice, as if a fault confessing. And here's what she says. I'm sorry that I spelt the word. I hate to go above you, because the brown eyes lower fall. Because you know, I love you. Still memory to a gray-haired man, that sweet child face is showing. Dear girl, the grasses on her grave have 40 years been growing. He lives to learn in child's hard school, how few who pass above him lament their triumph and his loss, like her, because they love him. Peter's. And that's for Lainey, and I'd like to read a short poem of my own for Lainey, whom I did not know well, but there are a couple of points of contact, probably earlier on, that just come back to me. And one was her telling me that as a college student, she had done some of her training in marine biology in Bodega Bay on the West Coast, which I know very, very well, having grown up not too far from there. And that was one point. The other was when I happened to give her an extra copy I had of the poems of William Clare, John Clare, a 19th century poet I urge you to look up, who wrote nature poems in a way quite different than the Romantics like Wordsworth. He wrote quite scientifically about the nature around him, and he was probably the first of the English poets to do that. And Lainey loved this book, and I felt pleased that I had given it to her and that it meant something to her. My poem is probably more in the romantic tradition. I'm not sure Lainey would have liked it, except it has a character in it, a bear. It's called I Like a Bear. It's after a poem by Marianne Moore called I Like a Mule, which I also urge you to look up. But I think that she would understand the sentiment in this poem. And I should point out that a bear garden is a reference to a phrase, a place, a scene that a bear has, a wild bear has wreaked havoc with, destroying things, tearing them apart, so maybe eating something he shouldn't have. That's a bear garden. So, I like a bear. I like a bear. I like his bulk. Though bothered by a bee or gnat or hunter, armed, he might attack. Erect, he will begin to hulk. And here as well, in this backyard, this sanctuary, this Eden, he'd create his own bear garden. If we, not he, were, well, ill-starred. I like his roar, savage and deep. This beast so stout, he may survive a swarm of killer bees and thrive. He guards the den of final sleep. Thank you. And next up is Gail Henny.
Can you all hear me? Good. And welcome everybody, especially to our 5 winners. And as a previous poet laureate of North Andover, where I judged contests fairly frequently, I have to say you are talented and you need to know it. And I would recommend that when you fill out your college essays, that you might consider saying that you have won or been mentioned for this particular afternoon, this particular tapestry reading, because it means something. I don't know if any of you know Mark Shore, who was a well-respected poet here in New England, but he told me a story where his daughter was interviewing for college, and his daughter was asked, "What can you tell me about yourself that sets you apart?" And the kid was thinking, "Oh my God, what do I say?" And then she remembered that she had memorized a poem as a high school student. And so she stood up and she performed the poem. And I will tell you, that student got in her first choice. So poetry can be powerful, and I would recommend you use it. And speaking of powerful poetry, I like to remember John Greenleaf Whittier as a political activist and as an abolitionist. But I'd like to share with you a poem which speaks more to his love of nature. This is an excerpt. Telling the Bees. Here is the place, right over the hill, runs the path I took. You can see the gap in the old wall still, and the stepping stones in the shallow brook. There is the house, with the gate red barred, and the poplars tall, and the barn's brown length, and the cattle yard, and the white horns tossing above the wall. There are the beehives raged in the sun, and down by the brink of the brook there are her flowers, weed overrun, pansy and daffodil, rose and pink. A year has gone, as the tortoise goes, heavy and slow, and the same rose blows and the same sun glows, and the same brook sings of a year ago. There's the same sweet clover smell in the breeze, and the June sun, warm, tangles his wings of fire in the trees, setting as then over fernside fawn. I mind me how with a lover's care from my Sunday coat I brushed off the burrs and smoothed my hair, and cooled at the brookside my brow and throat. Since we parted, a month has passed. To love, a year. Down through the beaches I looked at last on the little red gate and the well-swept mere. I can see it all now. The slant-wise rain or light through the leaves. The sundown's blaze on her window pane, and the bloom of her roses under the eaves. Just the same as the month before, the house and the trees, the barn's brown gable, and the vines by the door. Something changed, but the hive of the bees. John Greenleaf Whittier, 1858. Thank you, and I'd like to end with a short poem of my own entitled Lines. Squares of white, blue, and red, thrown over a taut clothesline by arthritic fingers. The smell of newly mown lawn lingering as milkweed seeds spiral in the sky. A bee making a beeline for an army, then tunneling through pollen. Tomatoes swelling red on staked vines, goldfinches swooping in to eat sunflower seeds. No Rubicon here, no line that must not be crossed. That happened on January 6th. Thank you. And please help me welcome our next reader, Priscilla Turner Spock.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Chris and Peter for all the work they do for all of the poetry community, and hold us off every summer. And Harris also for starting, Harris and Laney for starting this tradition. It's wonderful. I love to be here every summer. I don't know if you're all feeling it, but being here, rocked in the cradle of Whittier's meter, you can feel it. Anyway, I'm going to read 2 Whittier poems and then one of my own. The first is called The Laurels, and it's actually written about a club that used to meet in his day over in Maudsley Park. And I know if any of you have been there, the laurels that bloom there every year are just amazing. And they had a club for 20 years that used to meet over there. This was written on the last meeting of the club. The Laurels. From these wild rocks I look today, o'er leagues of dancing waves, and see the far, low coastline stretch away to where our river meets the sea. The light wind blowing off the land is burdened with old voices. Through shut eyes, I see how lip and hand the greeting of old days renew. O friends whose hearts still keep their prime, whose bright example warms and cheers, you teach us how to smile at time,
and set to music all his years. I thank you for sweet summer days, for pleasant memories lingering long, for joyful meetings, fond delays, and ties of friendship woven strong. As for the last time, side by side, you tread the paths familiar grown. I reach across the severing tide and blend my farewells with your own. Make room, O river of our home, for other feet in place of ours. And in the summers yet to come, make glad another feast of flowers. Hold in thy mirror, calm and deep, the pleasant pictures thou hast seen. Forget thy lovers not, but keep our memory like thy laurels green. And here's another Whittier poem that has a little bit of hope at the end, called The Day. Talk not of sad November, when a day of warm, glad sunshine fills the sky of noon, and a wind borrowed from some morn of June stirs the brown grasses and the leafless spray. On the unfrosted pool, the pillared pines lay their long shafts of shadow, the small rill singing a pleasant song of summer still. A line of silver down the hill slope shines. Hushed the bird voices and the hum of bees. In the thin grass, the crickets pipe no more. But still, the squirrel hoards his winter store and drops his nutshells from the shagbark trees. Softly, the dark green hemlocks whisper. High above, the spires of yellowing larches show, where the woodpecker and home-loving crow and jay and nuthatch winter's threat defy. O gracious beauty, ever new and old, O sights and sounds of nature, doubly dear when the low sunshine warns the closing year of snow-blown fields and waves of arctic cold. Close to my heart, I fold each lovely thing the sweet day yields, not disconsolate with the calm patience of the woods. I wait for leaf and blossom when God gives us spring. And now I'll read my poem. There's a small warning at the end. Lainey was a great environmentalist. She loved nature, as we all know, from her poems and her paintings, and was a steward of the environment. This is called Handle with Care. It's an ekphrastic poem that I wrote from a pastel drawing by Tom Bailey from Gloucester called The Front 40. I won a prize with this poem from the Rockport Poetry Festival. It's called Handle with Care. The meadow, wide with hues of green, is lush with grass from side to side. A hint of a tumbled field stone wall, built the old New England way, slopes across the picture's plain. In the foreground is a trace of long forgotten fence posts, leaning haphazardly, signs of deeds or land grants bestowed to farmers. It's hard to guess the history. A copse of feathered trees with leaves of autumn rust is sketched beside the ragged green. Beyond the trees, a golden swath of marshy reeds. The sky above is daubed with blue. Strokes of clouds drift by with white chalk marks. This world is fragile. We must take care to guard against a thoughtless hand or errant streaks or smudges. Handle carefully.
Place a frame around the scene. Preserve it under glass. You see, it could be easily erased.
We have one more reader, and as they already disappeared, they're in the kitchen fixing the food. Ah. Our last reader is kind of an honored guest today, not to mention a good friend. And I have grown to know Harris over the years, and I do consider him one of the top poets that I've ever heard. No, I do. I do. He also loves chocolate, and he's written poems about chocolate, which I think are wonderful. I happen to have a husband who loves chocolate almost as much as Harris. Anyway, after Harris finishes, what I would like to ask, while people are waiting for food to come out onto the table, is that you pick up your own chair and take it back in the house. And if you are not physically able to do that, that's fine. There are other people who will do it. And I am so glad to see all of you here today. I didn't say that in the beginning. This is my favorite event of the year. And this, the 26th one, has just come right up to standards. So now I present Harris Gardner, the co-founder of Tapestry of Voices.
Thank you, Chris, very much, and thank you, Peter, for getting this all together and setting it up every year. It's also been an honor to participate for most of the years of this program. Anyway, I want one word to the 5 winners that you all are very gifted. There's only one crime in poetry. That's if you have a gift and you ever surrender it. So be on your guard. Don't let anybody ever take it away from you. So anyway, again, I thank you again for all the readers, all the students, and the rest of the readers. This afternoon, it was a wonderful literary experience. So I'm going to go a little bit about Lainey. Lainey had a interwoven relationship between the spirit and nature. After the age of 10, up to the age of 10, she was kind of a Catholic, and then her mother went to a Congregationalist church, so she was briefly a Congregationalist. But since the age of 10, she was very much at home with her spirit in the natural world, and her painting reflects it as does her poetry. My poem is going to be one of reflecting the Jewish High Holy Days in early October this year. And so I'm reading Whittier's poem first, The Two Rabbis, and then I'm reading a poem of my own. So the two rabbis. The Rabbi Nathan, 80 years, walked blameless through the evil world. And then just as the almond blossomed in his hair, had a temptation all too strong to bear and miserably sinned. So adding not falsehood to guilt, he left his seat and taught no more among the elders, but went out from the great congregation, girt about with sackcloth, with ashes on his head, making his gray locks grayer. Long he prayed, smiting his breast. Then, as the book he laid open before him for the bath coal's choice, pausing to hear that daughter of a voice, Behold the royal preacher's words. A friend loveth at all times, yea, unto the end. And for the evil day thy brother lives. Marveling he said, It is the Lord who gives counsel in need. At Ecbatana dwells Rabbi Ben Isaac, who while men excels in righteousness and wisdom. As the trees of Lebanon, the small weeds that the bees bow with their weight. I will arise and lay my sins before him. And he went his way barefooted, fasting long with many prayers. But even as one who followed unawares, suddenly in the darkness feels a hand thrill with his touch his own, and his cheek fanned by odors subtly sweet, and whispers near of words he loathes, yet cannot choose but hear. So while the rabbi journeyed, chanting low the wail of David's penitential woe, before him still the old temptation came, and mocked him with emotion and the shame of such desires, that shuddering he abhorred himself, and crying mightily to the Lord to free his soul and cast the demon out, smote with his staff the blankness all about. At length in the low light of a spent day, the towers of Ecbatana far away rose on the desert's rim, and Nathan, faint and footsore, pausing where for some dead saint the faith of Islam reared a domed tomb, saw someone kneeling in the shadow, whom he greeted kindly. May the Holy One answer thy prayers, O stranger. Whereupon the sheep stood up with a loud cry, and then clasped in each other's arms. The two great men wept, praising him whose gracious providence made their paths one. But straightway, as the sense of his transgression smote him, Nathan tore himself away. O friend beloved, no more worthy am I to touch thee, for I came foul from my sins, to tell thee all my shame. Reply happily thy prayers, since naught availeth mine, may purge my soul, and make it white like thine. Pity me, O Ben Isaac, I who sinned. Awestruck Ben Isaac stood. The desert wind blew his long mantle backward, laying bare the mournful secret of his shirt of hair. I too, O friend, if not in act, he said, in thought have verily sinned. Hast thou not read, better the eye should see, that desire should wander? Burning with a hidden fire, that tears and prayers quench not, I come to thee, for pity and for help is thou to me. Pray for me, O my friend. But Nathan cried, Pray thou for me, Ben Isaac. Side by side in the low sunshine, by the turbaned stone they knelt. Each made his brother's woe his own, forgetting in the agony and stress of pitying love his claim of selfishness. Peace for his friend besought, his own became. His prayers were answered in another's name. And when at last they rose up to embrace, each saw God's pardon in his brother's face. Long after, when his headstone gathered moss, traced on the Takum march of Onkelos, and wrapped by Nathan's hand these words were read, Hope not the cure of sin till self is dead. Forget it in life's service, and the debt thou canst not pay, the angels shall forget. Heaven's gate is shut to him who comes alone. Save thou a soul, and it shall save thy own. My poem is relatively short. It's called Softer Than Silence. Hear my loud silence, O Lord. At its center is this small cry. Beneath its layers find my prayer. The chazan has a voice that soars to the world's roof. My rabbi's chants are like paired pianos playing Mendelssohn. Wisdom crowns a knowing air. An aperture is in my heart. Part is opaque, the other clear. Sometimes the voice takes refuge there to impart inscrutable wonders. Sometimes it rings in reticence. It has that right when one peers in. Often the best advice is none. In mute amazement, the voice sprouts ears to hear questions in the percussion. Answers grow wings in stillness. The window only needs to be slightly ajar, and the replies fly out to it to cohere with unfettered prayer. Chris, Peter, thank you all for coming today, and congratulations to all and to all.